NCIS. Origins Season 2 did far more than simply continue the story of a young Leroy Jethro Gibbs. Across its 18 episodes, the series pushed Gibbs deeper into the complicated world of the Naval Investigative Service, while steadily developing the relationships, trauma, and choices that would eventually help shape the legendary NCIS agent fans already know. Now, with Season 3 arriving on CBS on October 6, 2026, there are several important pieces of Season 2 worth remembering. The sophomore season ended with romance, danger, organizational upheaval, and one enormous kidnapping cliffhanger, all of which could have major consequences when the story returns. Gibbs and Lala finally crossed the line. Perhaps the biggest emotional development of Season 2 was the complicated relationship between Gibbs and Special Agent Cecilia Lala Dominguez. Their connection had been growing for much of the series, but Season 2 repeatedly forced them to confront feelings neither seemed completely prepared to acknowledge. At the same time, Gibbs was involved with Diane, creating an emotional triangle that became increasingly difficult to ignore. That tension reached another major turning point when Gibbs and Diane unexpectedly married in Las Vegas. The marriage initially appeared to give Gibbs another direction, but his bond with Lala never disappeared. By the finale, everything changed. With the future of the Camp Pendleton office uncertain, Lala considered leaving NIS altogether. She was even contemplating a new life connected to Manny, who had entered witness protection. Gibbs realized that losing Lala was something he could not simply accept. He went after her, and the two finally admitted what had been building between them. Then came the moment many viewers had been waiting for. Gibbs and Lala kissed. It was a surprisingly romantic ending for a show built around crime investigations and Gibbs' increasingly complicated personal life. But NCIS, Origins immediately reminded viewers that happiness in Gibbs' world rarely lasts forever. Randy's kidnapping changes everything. The Season 2 finale also delivered one of its darkest twists when Bernard "Randy" Randolph was kidnapped. Randy had spent much of the season working with the team's computer files, digitizing NIS records. What initially appeared to be ordinary administrative work ultimately became much more dangerous. Someone was apparently interested in what Randy had discovered while working through those files. That makes his disappearance much more than a random kidnapping. The biggest unanswered question heading into Season 3 is, what exactly did Randy find? If his work exposed information that someone desperately wanted hidden, Gibbs and the team could be facing a threat far bigger than they initially understand. Randy's fate also gives Season 3 an immediate mystery that can drive the opening episodes. And because Randy is one of the team's more recognizable personalities, his disappearance has the potential to change the emotional atmosphere of the entire group. The Camp Pendleton office was put in jeopardy. Another major Season 2 storyline involved the future of the NIS operation at Camp Pendleton. The finale revealed that the office was in danger of being shut down following scrutiny surrounding its operations. For Gibbs and his colleagues, this wasn't simply a bureaucratic inconvenience. The potential closure threatened the team they had spent so much time building. The uncertainty also created the perfect circumstances for Lala to consider walking away. Interestingly, the crisis ultimately connects to the evolution of the organization itself. The NIS eventually adopts the NCIS name, a change that helps improve the agency's public image. That detail is especially important because viewers already know where this organization eventually leads. The fascinating part of Origins is watching history happen before the audience's eyes. Franks remains one of Gibbs's most important influences. Mike Franks continued to be an essential presence in Season 2. For longtime NCIS viewers, Franks is already familiar as one of the most important people in Gibbs's professional history. Origins provides the opportunity to see that relationship developing much earlier, when Gibbs is still learning what kind of investigator and eventually what kind of leader he wants to become. Season 2 also expanded the story surrounding Franks' family, including his brother Mason and the community known as the Range. The storyline involving Mason and the mysterious events surrounding the compound added another layer to Frank's complicated personal history. These experiences matter because NCIS Origins isn't simply explaining Gibbs' past. It's also showing the people and circumstances that helped create the man he eventually became. Gibbs' personal life became increasingly complicated. One of the strengths of Season 2 was its willingness to show Gibbs before he became the emotionally guarded character audiences recognized from the original series. His relationship with Diane became increasingly complicated. Their marriage, despite beginning under unusual circumstances, forced Gibbs to confront questions about commitment and his tendency to retreat emotionally. Then came the growing realization that his feelings for Lala were becoming impossible to ignore. His relationship with his father, Jackson Gibbs, also received attention when Jackson arrived and complicated Gibbs's already fragile personal life. All of these relationships are important because they help explain why the older Gibbs became such a private, controlled figure. Every disappointment, every loss, and every difficult decision adds another layer. The season 2 finale was really about change. Hollywood ending worked because it combined two completely different emotions. On one side, Gibbs and Lala finally got the romantic breakthrough viewers had been waiting for. On the other, Randy was kidnapped, and the team's future was thrown into uncertainty. The Camp Pendleton office might not remain the same. Lala's future is uncertain. Randy's fate is unknown. Gibbs' personal relationships are complicated, and the organization itself is evolving. In other words, the finale didn't close the door on season 2, it opened several new ones for season 3. Mark Harmon makes season 3 even more important. Perhaps the biggest reason season 3 feels different is the expanded role of Mark Harmon. Harmon originally portrayed Gibbs for nearly 2 decades on the main NCIS series, and Origins has used him primarily as the narrator. Season 3, however, will feature Harmon on screen in every episode as part of a present-day storyline that connects with the younger Gibbs story in the 1990s. That creates an intriguing storytelling structure. Viewers will essentially be watching 2 versions of Gibbs at once. Austin Stoll's young Gibbs, still learning how to survive and lead, and Harmon's older Gibbs, carrying decades of memories and consequences. The season 3 teaser has already emphasized that idea, with older Gibbs reflecting on how impossible it can be to escape the past. That theme could become the heart of the new season, what season 3 needs to answer. When NCIS Origins returns, several questions should immediately be at the center of the story. What happened to Randy? Who kidnapped him? And what did he discover while digitizing the NIS files? Will Gibbs and Lala become a real couple? Their first kiss was a major payoff, but their complicated circumstances suggest that the romance is only beginning. What happens to the Camp Pendleton team? The potential shutdown could fundamentally change the direction of Gibbs's career. How will older Gibbs connect to the 1990s storyline? Mark Harmon's expanded role gives the series a new narrative dimension that could reveal information about Gibbs's life long after the events of the prequel timeline. And perhaps the most interesting question is whether season 3 will show exactly how the young, emotionally wounded Gibbs becomes the legendary investigator fans remember. The countdown to season 3. Season 2 established that NCIS Origins is no longer simply a nostalgic look at Gibbs's early career. It has become a character-driven story about trauma, friendship, love, professional loyalty, and the difficult choices that shape a person's future. The season 2 finale left Gibbs with something he had spent much of his young life avoiding: emotional vulnerability. At the exact moment he finally allowed himself to pursue Lala, Randy disappeared, and the team's professional future became uncertain. That contrast is what makes the upcoming season so promising. Season 3 will arrive on CBS on October 6th, 2026, and the story is now positioned to move between the 1990s and the present day. For longtime NCIS fans, the biggest attraction may be seeing Mark Harmon back as Gibbs in a much more substantial role. But the real emotional hook remains Austin Stoll's younger Gibbs and the question that has driven Origins from the beginning. How did this damaged young investigator become the Leroy Jethro Gibbs that the world eventually came to know? After everything season 2 put him through, season 3 may finally bring viewers closer than ever to the answer. NCIS Origins season 3, the question season 2 left behind. Season 2 of NCIS Origins didn't simply end it, left the door wide open for a much bigger chapter. The Camp Pendleton team was facing an uncertain future, Gibbs and Lala finally crossed an emotional line, and Randy Randolph was suddenly kidnapped. Now with season 3 scheduled to premiere on CBS on October 6th, 2026, those unresolved stories are poised to become the foundation of the next chapter. But there is an even bigger reason season 3 feels different. Mark Harmon is returning to the screen as present-day Leroy Jethro Gibbs. CBS says Harmon will appear throughout the 10-episode season in a present-day mystery connected to Gibbs's early 1,990 seconds Camp Pendleton days. That development could completely change how viewers understand everything that happened in season 2. Randy's disappearance could be the biggest mystery. The most immediate question is simple: Where's Randy? The season 2 finale ended with Bernard Randy Randolph being kidnapped, leaving the team with one of its most urgent cases yet. Randy isn't just another member of the office. His knowledge of the team's files and investigations makes his disappearance potentially significant. If his kidnapping is connected to something he discovered, the people behind it may have been watching the NIS team for much longer than anyone realized. Season 3, therefore, has an opportunity to begin with a classic NCIS mystery, while still keeping the emotional focus on Gibbs and his colleagues. The bigger question isn't only whether Randy survives. It's why someone wanted him badly enough to take him. Gibbs and Lala finally have to deal with their feelings. For 2 seasons, Gibbs and Lala Dominguez have slowly moved toward one another. Their relationship has been complicated by professional responsibilities, personal baggage, and other relationships. But the season 2 finale finally delivered the moment viewers had been waiting for. Gibbs and Lala shared their first romantic kiss. That doesn't necessarily mean their relationship will become easy. In fact, it could make things much more complicated. Gibbs is still young, emotionally guarded, and learning how to deal with the consequences of opening himself up to someone. Lala has her own ambitions and uncertainties about her future. Season 3 can now explore something Origins has been building towards since the beginning. What happens when Gibbs allows another person to get close to him? The answer could tell viewers a great deal about the man he eventually becomes. The Camp Pendleton office is still in danger. The team's future remains uncertain after the Camp Pendleton NIS branch faced the possibility of closure because of an operational scandal. That storyline is important beyond the immediate danger. The early NIS office is essentially the foundation on which Gibbs's future career is being built. If the office disappears, or if the team is forced to reorganize the relationships that define Gibbs, early career could change dramatically. CBS has confirmed that Season 3 will continue exploring Gibbs and Franks' early investigations, while the Camp Pendleton office faces this threat. So the danger isn't over. The team may have survived Season 2, but its future is far from secure. Mike Franks' influence continues if Gibbs is the heart of Origins. Mike Franks is one of the most important people shaping that heart. Season 3 will continue the relationship between young Gibbs and Franks, giving viewers another opportunity to watch their mentor and protege dynamic develop. Fans of the original NCIS already know where Franks' influence eventually leads. But knowing the destination makes the journey even more interesting. Every lesson Franks teaches Gibbs, every argument they have, and every dangerous case they investigate contributes to the formation of the Gibbs audiences eventually recognize. Season 3 could therefore reveal more about why Gibbs trusted Franks so deeply, and why Franks became such an important figure in his life. Then, there's Mark Harmon. This is arguably the biggest change coming to Origins. Until now, Mark Harmon has primarily served as the voice of present-day Gibbs. Season 3 expands that role dramatically. According to Paramount, Harmon will appear on screen in all 10 episodes as present-day Gibbs, with his storyline forming part of a season-long mystery connected to the events at Camp Pendleton in the 1990s. That means the show can now tell 2 Gibbs stories simultaneously. Austin Stoll's young Gibbs represents the man who is still becoming. Mark Harmon's Gibbs represents the man who survived everything that came afterward. The contrast could be powerful. Viewers won't simply see Gibbs' past anymore. They'll see how that past continues to affect him decades later. The past may finally catch up with Gibbs. The first Season 3 teaser has already emphasized the idea that Gibbs cannot simply escape his past. Harmon's present-day Gibbs delivers a haunting message about how, no matter how far someone goes, they cannot completely leave everything behind. That line may be more important than it initially appears. NCIS Origins has always been about explaining Gibbs through his history. Season 3 appears ready to reverse that concept by showing how the older Gibbs is still affected by the events of his younger life. The result could create one of the show's most emotional seasons yet. A bigger bridge to the original NCIS. Another exciting possibility is how Season 3 can strengthen the connection between Origins and the flagship NCIS series. Paramount describes the present-day mystery as a way to build a bridge between Origins and the larger NCIS universe. That doesn't mean every episode needs a crossover. Instead, the series can use Gibbs' memories and experiences to explain why certain relationships, habits, and philosophies became so important later. For longtime fans, those connections can turn small details into meaningful pieces of franchise history. What fans should remember most before Season 3 begins? There are 5 major things worth keeping in mind. Randy has been kidnapped. His disappearance is one of the biggest unresolved mysteries from the finale. Gibbs and Lala finally kissed. Their relationship is no longer just a slow burn possibility. The Camp Pendleton office remains vulnerable. The team's professional future is uncertain. Franks continues shaping Gibbs. Their relationship remains central to Gibbs's development. Present-day Gibbs is coming back. Mark Harmon will appear throughout Season 3, creating a new mystery that connects the present with Gibbs' early career. Together, those pieces give Season 3 an unusually strong starting point. The real story is still Gibbs. At its core, NCIS, Origins remains a story about transformation. Young Gibbs isn't the finished product. He's still learning how to investigate, how to lead, how to trust people, and perhaps most importantly, how to live with his own past. Season 2 brought him closer to Lala while threatening the stability of his professional life. Season 3 now has the opportunity to push him even further. And with Mark Harmon appearing as the older version of the same character, the series can finally ask its most fascinating question in a new way. What does the older Gibbs remember about the young man he used to be? That could be the secret ingredient that makes Season 3 more than another chapter in Gibbs' origin story. It could become a story about memory, regret, love, loyalty, and the unavoidable consequences of the choices made decades earlier. NCIS. Origins Season 3 premieres October 6, 2026 on CBS, with Mark Harmon joining the season-long mystery alongside Austin Stoll's young Gibbs. After the cliffhangers of Season 2, one thing is certain: Gibbs' past isn't finished with him yet. NCIS. Origins Season 3. Gibbs' past is about to become his biggest mystery. The ending of NCIS, Origins Season 2, left viewers with exactly the kind of questions a prequel should create. Gibbs and Lala finally confronted their feelings, Randy disappeared under mysterious circumstances, the future of the Camp Pendleton team became uncertain, and the young investigator found himself standing at another major turning point. But Season 3 has something even more intriguing waiting. For the first time, the series can place young Gibbs and present-day Gibbs at the center of the same larger mystery. Mark Harmon's return as the older Leroy Jethro Gibbs gives the new season an opportunity to connect decades of storytelling. Instead of simply watching Gibbs become the legendary NCIS agent, viewers may finally begin to understand how the choices of his younger years continue to shape him long after he left Camp Pendleton. The Gibbs fans know is still being created. When audiences first met Gibbs in the original NCIS, he already seemed completely formed. He was disciplined, quiet, intimidating, protective, brilliant at reading people. But Origins has shown that he wasn't always that way. Young Gibbs is more emotionally exposed. He makes mistakes. He struggles with trust. He is still learning from Franks and discovering how far he is willing to go for justice. That contrast is one of the show's greatest strengths. Season 3 can push that transformation even further by placing the younger Gibbs under pressure while allowing older Gibbs to reflect on what those years ultimately cost him. The question isn't simply what happened, it's what those events did to Gibbs. Randy's case could expose something much bigger. Randy's kidnapping remains one of the most immediate unanswered questions. At first glance, it could look like a straightforward criminal case, but the circumstances surrounding his disappearance suggest something more complicated. Randy's work with NIS records means he could have encountered information that other people wanted to remain hidden. If his disappearance is connected to those files, Gibbs and the team may discover that someone has been manipulating events from behind the scenes. That possibility could turn Season 3 into a much larger conspiracy story. And Gibbs is exactly the kind of investigator who won't stop once he realizes the official explanation doesn't make sense. His determination could put the entire team in danger. Lala and Gibbs face the hard part. The kiss between Gibbs and Lala was a huge emotional payoff. But television romances are rarely about the kiss itself. The real story begins afterward. Gibbs and Lala now have to decide what their relationship actually means. They work together, trust each other, and understand the risks of their profession. But their careers could make a romantic relationship extremely complicated. Lala has also considered leaving the NIS world, creating another obstacle. For Gibbs, losing Lala could mean more than losing a colleague. It could force him to confront one of the deepest fears in his life, becoming attached to someone only to lose them. That fear has been central to Gibbs' character throughout the larger NCIS universe. Diane's shadow could still matter. Gibbs' complicated history with Diane should not be forgotten either. Their relationship became one of the season's more surprising developments, especially after they married in Las Vegas. Even though Gibbs' connection with Lala continued to grow, the consequences of that marriage cannot simply disappear. Season 3 may have to deal with the emotional fallout. That could also provide another piece of the puzzle, explaining why older Gibbs became so guarded about relationships. The young man viewers are watching now is still capable of making emotional decisions. The older Gibbs has learned to be much more careful. That difference doesn't happen overnight. Franks knows Gibbs better than almost anyone. Mike Franks remains one of the most important people in Gibbs' life. Their relationship isn't always easy. Franks challenges Gibbs, pushes him, and sometimes forces him to confront truths he would rather ignore. But that is exactly why Franks matters. He isn't simply teaching Gibbs how to investigate. He's teaching him how to survive. Season 3 can continue showing the evolution of their relationship while giving viewers more insight into why Gibbs eventually regarded Franks as one of the most influential people in his life. Every difficult conversation between them has the potential to become part of Gibbs' future personality. The Camp Pendleton crisis could change Gibbs' career. The possible closure or restructuring of the Camp Pendleton office is another major storyline heading into Season 3. For Gibbs, this isn't just about keeping a job. It's about protecting the team he has helped build. The people around him have become his professional family. If the office changes, their relationships could change with it. And that's particularly important because Origins is moving closer to the world that longtime NCIS fans recognize. The NIS organization is evolving, its identity is changing, and Gibbs is changing with it. Mark Harmon's Gibbs adds a new layer. The biggest storytelling opportunity in Season 3 is undoubtedly Mark Harmon's expanded presence. Austin Stoll remains the young Gibbs, but Harmon returns as the older version of the character. That means the show can explore two timelines at once. The younger Gibbs is experiencing events for the first time. The older Gibbs already knows how everything turned out. That difference creates enormous dramatic potential. Imagine watching young Gibbs make a decision while older Gibbs reflects on its consequences. The audience may understand the emotional significance of a moment before the younger version of the character does. That is a powerful storytelling device. Could Season 3 reveal why Gibbs became so closed off? One of the most interesting questions surrounding the series is why Gibbs eventually became such a private person. The original NCIS often presented him as someone who rarely talked about his emotions. Origins has gradually shown the reasons behind that personality. His relationships, losses, professional experiences, and complicated family history all contribute to the man he becomes. Season 3 could take another significant step toward explaining that transformation. The young Gibbs still wants connection. He still wants people around him. He still allows himself to care. But every time he loses something important, another layer of emotional armor begins to form. The present-day mystery could change everything. The present-day storyline is particularly exciting because it gives older Gibbs something he hasn't had in Origins before: an active role in the mystery. Instead of simply narrating the past, Harmon can participate directly in a story that forces Gibbs to confront his memories. That creates an intriguing possibility. Perhaps the present-day case will reveal that something from Gibbs' early career was never truly resolved. Maybe an old enemy has returned. Maybe a secret from Camp Pendleton has resurfaced. Or perhaps Gibbs is finally forced to confront a decision he has spent decades trying to forget. Whatever the answer is, the connection between the two timelines could become the defining feature of Season 3. The emotional stakes are higher than ever. Season 2 proved that Origins can balance procedural storytelling with emotional drama. Season 3 appears ready to increase both. Randy's kidnapping provides the immediate danger. The Camp Pendleton crisis threatens the team's future. Gibbs and Lala provide the emotional center. Franks provides the mentorship. And Mark Harmon's older Gibbs provides the connection to the larger NCIS mythology. Put together, those elements give the new season plenty of room to surprise viewers. What comes next could redefine Gibbs. The most exciting thing about NCIS Origins is that longtime viewers already know Gibbs' destination. The mystery is the journey. We know he eventually becomes one of the most respected investigators in the NCIS universe. We know he develops a reputation for leadership. We know he builds relationships that define his career. But we don't know exactly how every piece falls into place. Season 3 has the opportunity to fill in another part of that puzzle. And this time, the older Gibbs may be there to tell us what those memories mean. That could make the season more personal, more emotional, and potentially more revealing than anything that came before. Young Gibbs is still becoming the man we know. Older Gibbs is still carrying the consequences. And somewhere between those two versions of the same character lies the real story of NCIS, Origins. Season 3 isn't simply about what happens next. It's about finally